You ready? Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting in Lancaster County Council of the whole meeting to order. I'd ask that the clerk note for the record that a quorum of council is present, that the public notice of the meeting, including the meeting agenda, has been posted the required length of time in the lobby of the county administration building and on the county website, and that the news media was notified of the meeting time and place. I'd like to welcome you to our county council meeting. I would ask that you take a moment to turn off or place on vibrate any cell phones or pagers. Thank you for not wearing any hats or caps in the council chambers. And please be considerate of others in the room by refraining from conversations during the meeting. I ask that you please stand and join council for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation given this afternoon by Council Member Stuart Graham.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Dear loving Father, thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work. I pray for the agenda set before us today. Please grant us the wisdom to do what is right and what is good for this county. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Okay. I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda submitted.
So moved.
Have a motion from Mr. McGriff. Have a second.
Second.
Second from Mr. Neal. Any changes or deletions? All those in favor, please. Oh, we got to do a roll call vote, don't we? We have. We got. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, it passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on. We don't have any citizens' comments, so we'll move on to item 6A, Strategic Plan Quarterly Update. Ms. Snowden.
Good evening, Chairman and members of council. We'll walk through this. I know that you've seen this before as far as, let's see. Yes, I don't think it's. I'll just get you to, because it's not working. Okay. All right, so the vision, the Lancaster County is a network of thriving communities offering the highest quality of life in the Carolinas, and our mission to enhance our community's quality of life by enabling people to live, learn, work, worship, play, and grow both personally and professionally. Our values pyramid is service, respect, teamwork, productivity, safety, and security. And the strategic themes: public safety, infrastructure, quality development, resource optimization, and high performance. So the first strategic focus, this is just one of the objectives for public safety: meet the demands of growth of the county without negatively impacting the quality of public safety services. And again, progress has been made on key initiatives, including the construction of the detention facility, of a new detention facility, coroner's office, sheriff's evidence storage facility, enhancements to 911, fire infrastructure and equipment. We had our COVID-19 pay for public safety professionals, implementation of the Indian Land Consolidated Fire Service, preliminary discussions of a dedicated fire service millage. These efforts provide a solid foundation for operational analysis. The next page, Objective PS1, meet the demands of growth of the county without negatively impacting the quality of public safety services. And while there will never be not an impact, the FY26 administrator recommended budget that was approved by council included additional public safety staffing, staffing for the animal shelter to provide some relief on that end, the construction of additional EMS stations that is in the budget and in the works, creative fire EMS staffing in Indian Land to again reduce some of the demands on fire service, enhanced staffing for McDonald's Green Fire, the purchase of public safety vehicles and apparatus, as well as council understanding that there was a need for increased health services at the detention center. So for this objective, this metric, we're at about 68% and then on target progressing. The target date was March 30th of 2025. And I am not changing these target dates that were recommended back during the 2023 process of this, but it's important to note that this is a living document with these goals being ongoing, and we'll never truly meet 100% of all of the goals. The next public safety or the next public safety strategic focus, PS 3.1, create a fire service growth management working group, including career, volunteer, and blended representatives. Administration, specifically the administrator, is working with the 19-member fire commission, county council, fire, and EMS director to meet this objective. And during the FY26 budget process, again, the administrator presented a plan for additional staffing that optimizes infrastructure, equipment, and personnel costs. And so we would look at this as being 50%, 56% meeting the current metric. The strategic focus, next, infrastructure. Prepare and present one comprehensive roadway funding study to analyze all known funding sources by June 30th, 2025. The county largely achieved this objective effort thanks to the work of our Public Services Division Director, the CTC, and Council, and the proposed reconstituted road funding plan in preparation for the November 2025 ballot. Additionally, Mr. Cato and Administrator Marstall, as well as one of the project managers, identified potential local, state, and federal funding sources that may be leveraged. And of course, on June 13th, 2025, there was the submission to the South Carolina Infrastructure Bank. Another example of an associated activity outlined in the strategic plan is the development of a data-driven infrastructure prioritization plan to identify and map service levels for all county-maintained road. This is a multi-year project that has gone underway, and in the FY26 budget, there's an additional $100,000 to continue this. And so we're on target and progressing there. The strategic focus infrastructure objective 3.2, develop and present one utility infrastructure, water, sewer, gap analysis, and needs assessment to identify high leverage opportunities to drive commercial growth by June 30th, 2025. During your retreat, your annual retreat this year, the Director of Economic Development did present information about gaps, infrastructure gaps, as well as the need for an industrial spec building in the county inventory. So that would enhance the county's ability to continue to attract high-quality manufacturing and/or a warehouse distribution partner. Also, the Economic Development Director and his team have inventoried the availability of utilities at Air Rail Park, lots 1, 2, 4, and 5, Quality Drive, Hoss Camp Road, Foster's Crossroads, Heath Springs Park, and Air Rail Park Phase 2. So we are progressing there. Strategic focus, quality development. So 1.1, prepare and present a comprehensive financial impact model to estimate the net financial impact growth patterns throughout the county by subcommittee areas by June 30th of 2025. So in the comprehensive plan, it does identify our sub areas as well as provides a good analysis and a good starting place for the patterns of travel, where people are working and that sort of thing. So that has given us a good start. Objective 2.1, prepare, prioritize, and present a list of recommendations within the county comprehensive plan. This objective was largely met during the third quarter of 2024. Next, consider the adoption and implementation of a revised Unified Development Ordinance. Under the guidance of Ms. Harden, several chapters have already been presented, and this is underway with the target goal of completing the revisions during the fourth quarter of 2025 or the first quarter of 2026. Next, the strategic focus, resource optimization, optimize sources of non-property tax funding to advance the priorities of the county. One of the associated activities to get us there is the establishment of a formal grant management function, which is in the FY26 budget. Additionally, the administrator is working with finance and procurement to begin a countywide review of purchase card expenditures. And another resource optimization is working with IT to prepare and maintain a comprehensive software inventory, currently valued at approximately $3 million. So we are on target. The next objective, high performance, complete a comprehensive review of the county's workforce approach to identifying opportunities to enhance recruitment and retention. Establish an ongoing method of monitoring countywide employee engagement. So we have made significant strides within the last couple of years with employee recognition programs, employee engagement committee, working well with them, as well as the public safety committee, countywide holiday and recognition programs, as well as over the last year or so, providing our employees with a total overall compensation analysis. And in the FY26 budget, council approved funding for a countywide employee engagement survey. So we are on target. And next, I think that was just a, so next steps and questions. In the coming months, we'll be working diligently to work more closely with department directors, staff to advance this living document, and we'll be on refining objectives and tracking associated activities, as well as identifying for council the performance metrics that we are falling behind on, and some methods. Some of this just has to do with resources, and taking a collaborative effort will ensure that we'll have continued alignment with the strategic priorities that have been set out. And as you know, over the last couple of budget cycles, all of the departments have to identify when they're making budget requests and how they are actually, which area, which objective, strategic priority that they're actually looking to meet. So, any questions?
Any questions?
Well, I look at economic development and they say we're 98%, the current metric of this, but we have identified, the sites and all, but there's still a need to identify the water and the sewer capabilities of those sites, because I know like the water and sewer is running a 16-inch line down Riverside Road. I think if you check with them, in sewer, I think it needs to be identified whether it's the city or the county, and kind of a general idea of what it's going to cost to have sewer run to the property lines of some of these sites, because as we all know, infrastructure is very, very expensive. And I'd hate to get somebody in here looking at a site and then you tell them it's going to be $10 million to get water and sewer to it. But to me, that seems like it's something we need to take to the next level. Is that something that we could look into?
Yes.
Absolutely, and actually you have to add to it is that what we're seeing now from prospects is the availability of energy, talking about the capacity for kilowatts from who's going to service that, to even the gas lines. And so we do have a good understanding, working with the local providers, have been great partners for economic development, and they serve on our Economic Development Advisory Board. But you're right, taking it to the next step, we do know some of those, what's available at the Heath Springs Business Park, what serves the Air Rail Park, but think about some of the other lands where we've identified as future growth areas for economic development. To put that full package together is a future step.
And this,
Excuse me,
I'm
Steve,
sorry.
you said the gas line that's coming down Riverside Road is for
There's gonna be a water line.
water line? And the black pipes, why that, I've never seen the black pipes. It's like, I see the green and the blues,
I don't know.
and all of a sudden I seen
You
black.
call
I'm like,
Lancaster County Water and Sewer, I don't know.
I'm like, what in the world? But
They might have got a cheaper price.
Councilman Harper, the way that I look at the strategic plan is, back in 2023, these were the strategic objectives.
Okay.
And now we have to look at how do we actually move them forward.
Yeah, that's what I'm inquiring about. Take it to the,
Yes, yes, sir.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you. Going to move on over to item 6B, road inventory update. Mr. Cato.
I even brought something this time. And I
Got some
brought
backup,
somebody.
huh?
Yes, I do. Good afternoon. Thank
Uh-oh.
you for having us.
That's his bodyguards,
Yeah, something like that. Anyhow,
Secret Service.
with this, we brought with us our project managers, on-call consulting team, and if some of you have not met our new, I believe he said, the GIS analyst, Mr. Marcus Curtin. Glad to have him, and this, I think, was one of the first projects he got to dive in on, so he's all aboard. And from Kimley Horn, we have Mr. Brandon Murr and Mr. Philip Pruitt. They have helped us get this thing underway. As you know, the road inventory, I'm going the wrong way. The road inventory, we've gone a long winding road to get to this point, and just kind of back you up a little bit on it. Staff has this that's very useful. It's from 1994. It's just an old printout with a C or S and about how long we thought the road is. So we still use this today, but as you can see, times have changed. This was 1994. In 2010, we decided to do another road inventory as well to upgrade on this, and we wound up with 15 volumes of this. Some districts had more than one, and it's also equally as helpful. Nice table of contents, a little description of the road, some pictures in there, and that's been very useful. It did take up a lot of space, but there was a CD, I believe, included with it, with the spool of the inventory of the roadways on it. Now, in or around 2017, we, in-house, we created some booklets. I believe some members of council got them, public safety. It was our communications department at the time was big on that, and we had that put out. So that was equally as good. If some of you all still have yours, I'm sure you probably still use them. But the problem is we can't get 100,000 of those out. So where we want to do with this is, like I said, we pretty much have our county roads inventoried. It's just outdated. We haven't taken into consideration the growth. None of these inventories really technically added the roads that we accepted back in the 2010 era, like Sun City, Walnut Creek, when we were accepting roads like Reed Point, things of that nature. They were never really inventoried, though, most of us knew they had become county roads because at the time they came to council for approval. So we put all this together, and again, this slide comes, first bullet comes straight from our presentation for the transportation taxes. Lancaster County has roughly 1,400 miles of publicly maintained roadway, 500 county other municipality roads. Like I said, that comes from all this data that we have been using up to this point. The last road inventory was in 2010, but the newer subdivisions were not inventoried. And since 2018, most new roads are now private. They're not inventoried as well, though we, know as staff that they're private. Okay, so the road inventory. will benefit. Number one, it's going to benefit not just public works or staffs, it'll benefit public safety, development services. Any staff department at some point will probably utilize this road inventory. And again, those staffs have been very helpful up to this point too. Public safety has had input. Our assessor, Mr. Brad Carnes, very, very helpful. GIS, development services. We all kind of, in some way, shape, or form, we have something to do with the county roads. It's going to be user-friendly, and again, with Mr. Curtin now on board, it's going to be GIS integrated, and even somebody like me realizes that is the future, and that's what we're going to be looking into have our stuff. But one of the biggest things, too, it's going to be expandable, and it's going to be maintainable. So it's not going to sit like this one, nothing ever added to it, or in some cases, taken out of it. We have abandoned some roads at times, or we have closed some roads, and we know now there's a process to do that, so we could actually have a little tidbit outlined in the inventory about that. Elected officials, other agencies, and again, probably most importantly, our customers, our citizens, when this is ready to go live and online, can access this, and hopefully not just to see who owns the road, which is the main goal behind this, but also it'll have some other features that we'll discuss. And one of those could be actually a pavement analysis option on our paved roads, where we can actually rate our county roads in a engineered system that says, good, average, poor, needs preservation, needs rehabilitation. And I'll tell you, your transportation committee told me back in March when they were looking at a pretty good list of roads to pick from, they said, we wished we had a list of the county stuff, because, the state has different priorities. It's always good to have something like that. So this pavement analysis feature is going to be very, very good for our paved roads in the future. And then for due diligence purposes, we've been utilizing the county's Register's Deed website, Lancaster County GIS, and a lot of other departments, and all the data we have. Communications, addressing, they had some data. The old GIS director had some data, so we've kind of spent this time combining it all and working in phases. We analyze each document by segment, looking at individual plats to determine road ownership. We even used a portion of this, how we're going to do this inventory, pretty recently on a road that was looking for ownership. I believe it was called Gordon Drive. It was, one of those, and we get those from time to time. And then from 2 points based on GIS data. And to date, the inventory, just the gathering of the county roadways, is about 48% complete within the system, which equates to, and this is where I'll go back to that first slide, 324 of the 681 current county GIS center line. Like I said, from all of our old data, even everything we've presented, we've been saying about 500 miles. Just the work we've done recently, and most of it's probably your newer developments or your private roads, but we know now that we're really inventorying 681 miles instead of 500 and something. So that was, got us going in the right direction as well to start with. So with that, the timeline, again, the timeline's, like I said, we've been meaning to start this, then COVID hit, and then we had an issue with, budgeting with road funding, and then one year we were trying to do more with staffing than we were. But we were able to get this funded for the first phase last year, so we got that done. We're looking to continue to inventory and gather information and program this fiscal year, and then complete it in the fiscal year, if funded, of the FY 26-27, and go live with it.
Can you go back to that last slide?
Yes.
Is there a breakdown? I guess you got it on there as far as what the red, green, and the yellow means.
Yes, I believe the red they have not reviewed yet. The green, I think, is under review, and I believe the red is the
yellow.
The yellow is the completed. And just for the, like I said, yes, sir?
I think it has the green as complete, the yellow under review, pending, going like light orange, the pending QC, and the red is not reviewed based off of the chart.
That would be correct.
Can't see that.
I can't see it from this far either. But it'll be.
I can see it easier on my screen.
Yeah, and and eventually that's what people will be able to look at in front of their screens instead of thumbing through a book and this, that, and the other. So we're very, very pleased with it. Like I said, I know your transportation committee is very, very supportive and can't wait for this thing to be done. And it will help, as we move forward. Like mentioned prior, it is in our strategic plan. I think we'll be in a whole lot better place once this is in place.
And how will this work, Jeff? Do you go on the website and you pull this up and you type in a road name and what's going to come up at that point?
It'll work similar to that, or you could click on it. DOT has one. It used to be called Street Finder. Now I think it's called Roadway Information. Some other municipalities have it. You can either type in the road or probably, click from a drop-down dash and it'll do it that way.
So what will it show? Was it going to show?
It'll show the road from beginning to end, and it'll tell you who maintains it. And again, there are other features with it. Some of those will be layers, mostly, probably for like public works to look at. It could identify your signage on it, your cross line size, and your stream crossings and things of that nature. So it'll have a lot of other features that we can continue to add. And more importantly is once we get this one, like I said, it's not a hard copy that we put on shelf. These guys are going to design it and help train us to train you all, and then hopefully for the public, it's going to be maintainable. So we won't have to come back in 10 years and do another one. We hope we'll just keep maintaining this one.
Any other questions?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, Mr. Cato. Yeah,
Yes,
I had
sir.
a couple of questions, and it's similar to, I think, what Mr. Carnes was saying. So when we look on GIS, are there going to be layers that we could click on that say, show me all the state maintained roads, show me all the county maintained roads, and it'll kind of show that whole layer of all the roads based off those parameters?
Yes, that is correct. And it will also, one thing we are asking for too, Councilman, is for it to have, again, the state's going to have their information. I'm not as worried about that, but it'll have what roads are state, and it can have how many miles that's in the county that are state maintained. But more importantly, too, we probably need to keep an idea of how many county-maintained roads, because that's not really going to grow too much, but your private ones will, or possibly your city roads will grow. So we can have it all in one place and know that.
And then one other question. In a prior slide, you had kind of a city map look like, and it showed like a grid system right there. What are those 4-digit numbers in purple?
Those are segment ID numbers. Those are what identify each segment in the system. So one road, sorry.
So we hear you online.
Sorry for that. The 4-digit numbers are segment ID numbers that identify each segment of a roadway. So when we're doing inventory, this particular image represents an area where you can see different colors on different segments. So just because Bar Street, for instance, is one continuous road, there are different segments with different owners. And we've either been able to identify specifically the owner or identify that more research is needed for different segments. But that is the way that breaks down. So in the GIS system, those 4-digit numbers are searchable by just the number, for instance, or you can pull up the road name and get the whole road and all of the segments.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Is there an ability to do the amount of traffic for those roads as well as that's shown on a layer?
We don't
Traffic.
currently have that, but that is a capability of the system, actually. So that goes in hand with the maintenance aspect of it, to be able to forecast road wear and tear. Knowing the road structure and the traffic data for the roads is going to be critical. Now, whether or not you want to have it in the GIS, that's up to you. But like Jeff was saying, the amount of layers and information that you can put in there is really quite broad.
Okay. Yeah, and those were the exact reasons why I was thinking it's just to kind of measure how much the use is. And And then one last question, are there any AI opportunities with any of this? So I know, Mr. Cato, you were talking about keeping this updated. Is there an ability where as projects get approved or as the certificates of completion get issued, that those things are automatically updated? Is there an opportunity for AI to do that? Are you looking at any of those opportunities?
Marcus, this is why I brought him.
So Esri is the software that this particular app is going to be pushed through, and they do have the capability for some type of AI interaction. However, I think for the most part, the upkeep and the maintenance of it is going to be between me and Kimley Horn. So.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, do you have
Thank
any
you.
other questions? Do you have more, anything else, Mr. Luis?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on to item 4C, Unified Development Ordinance discussion. Ms. Harden.
Thank you, sir. Sean is with Tyson, no, let's see, White, Smith, and Cucino now.
Yep,
Yep.
right up there on the screen.
Okay.
White Smith, Cousineau.
Cousineau, thank you. Ms. Kelly got partners since we've started this project. And Sean is going to help moderate the discussion about subdivisions for the section. This is the last section that we have that needs your input before we give you the draft at the end of September. All of our comments from the staff and the workshop will be turned in at the beginning of August. I believe August 7th was our date to turn those in. We have another workshop coming up a week from today in this room where we'll talk about infrastructure with the stakeholders, and then we'll give the input to the consultants who will provide us all with a draft that would be available for public review.
And when will that draft be available?
The draft should be available in October.
Okay.
The September 30th timeframe. Once they send it to us, we're going to send it straight to you and the Planning Commission as well, because we'll need to start scheduling the public hearings for the document.
Great. All right. Thanks, Allison. Again, I'm Sean Scootmeyer with White Smith Cousineau. It's good to see you all again. This is the last preview of a module, and as you all recall, we're going to give you a quick project update, but this particular module is about cluster subdivisions, development areas, and infrastructure standards. So those are the topics that we're going to discuss. Then we're going to talk about next steps and where we are in the project. So there's our project timeline designed to get the draft complete by this fall for your review. This is an outline of the UDO chapters, mainly intended to show which one we're focused on now, which is Chapter 9, Subdivision and Site Design. In terms of the topics, it's combining the cluster subdivision overlay with the current Chapter 6, Subdivision and Infrastructure Standards. So all the infrastructure and subdivision standards will be in one place. This will not be the procedures for subdivisions. That will be in the procedures chapter. Any questions about kind of where we are and the project in general? All right, great. So we're going to talk about a couple of concepts really to focus on cluster subdivisions and what you can do with a cluster subdivision. Why are we clustering? So on the slide, we just have an image of a subdivision. I'm going to call this a conventional subdivision. You've got relatively large lots. Each house is the little brown rectangle. The lots are the green rectangles. But so in clustering, you basically require or allow, depending on which approach you take, smaller lots. And what that does is it creates additional space for something. You end up with smaller lots for the individual houses and something else. And so what do you do with that something else? Really, one of the primary ways that communities that are concerned with the quality of life impacts of developments go is conservation subdivision. So you take those areas, some percentage usually, of the lot, and it remains in conservation, so we just show it in trees. The benefit of this is that kind of twofold. First of all, you have the obvious conservation benefits. But from the developer's perspective, allowing those smaller lot sizes creates lower infrastructure costs because they don't have as many miles of road to build, curb and gutter, et cetera. So by clustering all of the lots and houses in one particular location or a more refined palette of locations, you lower the cost. And there is some discussion about, and the theory behind this is that the lot yield is the same for the developer, so they can sell as many houses. Now, this particular approach really requires a couple of things to work really well. First is larger lot sizes. This is a lot better for rural zoning districts. When I say larger lot sizes, I mean, 2, 3 to 5 acres maybe. Because especially in areas that aren't served by sewer, once you start getting smaller lot sizes, it's really an academic issue. You have to have a certain lot size to provide septic. So, works great with sewer. This kind of metric of changing from larger lots to smaller lots, there is some minimum threshold where you wouldn't want to go below that for these lot sizes. Then another choice, and these are just kind of terms that I think are useful for our conversation. So we can talk about conservation as one purpose. Open space would be another. Here, same situation, same percentages, same lots, but on the right you have a walking path and a baseball field and a community garden. So these are other things you can do with open space. And if you want, you could have sort of a menu of options that a developer would have to provide in that open space if you wanted to require a specific menu. And so as council, this is really your absolute purview. What do you want Lancaster County's open space policy to be? When I say that, currently you have a cluster subdivision that is designed really to allow smaller lot sizes, mainly, I think, for the preservation of natural areas. But, there are lots of complaints about it. And so what we are here to talk about is how to make what is happening now better. So the way it's working now is minimum site size of 30 acres. So this wouldn't be available for, some smaller subdivisions. The open space requirement is 25%. That excludes certain, I'm going to call them non-developable areas. Decreases the street frontage buffer and significantly decreases the minimum lot size. However, it does require varied lot sizes. And then also it has basically standard setbacks, 20 feet front, 7.5 foot side. And I think one of the issues and the unhappiness has been with gross density as the metric and the perception of density in the development. Any questions about, the current framework and how that's working? All right. So really the discussion topics for you as council are, what are your primary concerns with cluster subdivisions as it's working now? And in the illustration to the right, I don't know if anybody would want to use this, but this is the Treetops subdivision it was developed under the cluster subdivision overlay. And as you can see, the dwelling units are located in sort of confined areas, basically on the western side. The eastern side remains largely undeveloped. So that's just maybe an example of what we could talk about, because I know sometimes it's easier to talk about something when you can see it. So what are some of council's concerns with cluster subdivisions as it's working now?
Well, one thing that I think would be different, I've heard Stuart complain, like on a like this right here, is what they counted as their open space was
It's floodplain.
was all
Floodplain.
wetlands, and to me, a cluster should be limited in the length of blocks, because, I mean, that's more of a conservation type. I mean, a cluster, I mean, to me, those clusters are too big. I mean, you see what I'm talking about? And they were able to count all the wetlands for the gross density. And then it looks like in the new proposal, they couldn't do this, could they, with using, what do you have, 25%?
Correct.
So they could use a cluster, but they wouldn't be able to have as many units. Am I correct in this development? Possibly, because Ms. Hard, do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
I hear you, because you're basically saying if they had 25% required open space that wasn't wetland, they wouldn't have been able to put 900 houses on that. It would have been less.
They counted, the issue is we're able to count open space, wetlands as open space, and now you're saying, what was the proposal? Back it up.
Can you go back one?
You could back it up one and say that open space requirement, 25% excluding wetlands. So that makes the difference there. Is that correct? That's correct. Yeah. So
I mean,
what you were asking.
Yeah, well, we can go with treetops, because I'll say this with treetops. I mean, I think, so you got a piece of property that had 600 acres, 400 of it was buildable, 200 essentially was not. And that's what you see in there, the open space there. To me, the issue, what I don't like about what we currently have in Lancaster County is that if somebody has let's just say they have a lot similar to this, let's just say they have 60% buildable, 40% or something like that that's not buildable. Their only option right now is to go to an MDR designation, which would allow more houses per acre overall. But what I really like about the conservation idea is using the land as it lies. And to me, in treetops, instead of it going to MDR, I would have really preferred that as a 600 acre lot size. I would have preferred to see 600 houses in this setting, in a rural setting, instead of going to 900, if that makes sense. So I like this approach a lot. I think the big important things are your minimum lot sizes and your lot widths, and how we've seen property that comes up and the developer doesn't really have an option if there's wetlands on there, except to go to MDR. To me, this is your in-between, where you don't have to go for so much density or prove so much density, and it still lets them have an option to develop the site.
May I ask a follow-up? Thank you. In the case of adding in conservation subdivision into like an LDR, or an RR, where LDR has 1.5 units per acre and RR has 1 unit per acre, we could design it so that the cluster subdivision would be available in either of those, so that there would not be an increase in density, but there would be a decrease in lot size in the concept. Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I also have a question to follow up through. One of the things that has been discussed in a lot of communities, and both communities before I got here, is the concept of open space. Is it usable open space, or is it open space preservation? Open space has several different definitions, and depending upon which program you're in, sometimes it just means property that's left open to the sky for whatever reason. Sometimes open space can be recreation. Like Sean was saying, you can use it as a park or a community garden or the like, and our policies are pretty strict on what you can and can't do, so we're looking at alternatives to use that open space. But the usable open space is different than the wetlands and the floodways, because those things can't be built on anyway. So in the concept, we're talking about removing the property that can't be built on regardless from the calculation, because you wouldn't be able to build on it to begin with.
Ms. Harden.
Yes, sir.
I was just showing Mr. Marstall, if you don't mind, in some of your research, look into what's going on in Greenville County. They have halted cluster housing for like a year, but it's because they said developers are abusing it, and there's some, it's not covered. I think they're counting detention ponds as open space and all, so let's just that make sure that we don't. But I think with what you got here, I agree that is when you're not counting the wetlands, that makes that you got usable open space.
Yeah.
And I would like to see more of, I guess these are, does it make sense for smaller, do you limit the number of blocks or houses in a cluster, or am I out of line? I mean, like,
No,
we
we
got
can.
300 houses?
Yeah, we have
Y'all
lot
have
breaks.
that?
We have breaks that are required.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Harper, just so that I understand your comment, earlier you made the comment that maybe the clusters are too big, and so really, are you saying that you would prefer to see a cluster where there are maybe, I'm just going to use an
I don't
example,
know, every
25
site's
houses.
different, but to me, when you got 6 houses deep and 40 long, that's
a dense subdivision.
That's too much. It needs to be broken up. I think it needs to be broken up more than that.
Sure, so you'd rather see the open
Limit
space
the,
more integrated throughout the different
need-
clusters.
More of the ones that I've been through that are, little more conservation in the area of the housing. I know that, when we do, the way everything is mass graded, but still, I think we need to look at the block length and all. Do y'all understand where I'm coming from?
Well, that's kind of what I was saying. With that site specifically, it was 600 acres. To me, that would have been a perfect LDR, house per acre, and it's 600 houses instead of 900 houses, and they would have been able to break that up, kind of what you're talking about. Instead, they just put as many houses as they could on that buildable space.
I've got a question. Could we possibly have the open spaces, could that be spread out through the community, and that would help
That's what
break
I'm
it
talking
up?
about, yeah.
Yeah, and have place where people could walk the dogs, get out, throw a football, something of that nature, and that would break it up a lot. And also parks and trails and stuff that they put through these things and put it in these wetlands, and every time it rains, nobody can use it or it washes out. It's about useless. I think if we were requiring them to have parks or wetlands, put it on decent ground and not something that's got to have so much upkeep.
I think they address that. Would you?
Good.
And can we have a menu of options for the open space, that allowable options? Absolutely. Okay.
And one other thing on parking in there, y'all have heard me harp on this all the time about everybody parking on the streets. We don't have enough of overflow parking. require them to have several in there and spread them out in different areas because if somebody's got to walk several blocks, they're not going to use it. They're going to park on the street. So if we put them in different areas, they'd be closer, if they have family come over or whatever,
Overload parking,
they could park and then not have so far to walk.
I have a follow-up question, if it's okay. The areas of parking can be incorporated along with some of the more sensitive areas if they're done with permeable pavers, or even if they're done with gravel, as long as there's a design to catch the gravel before it hits the road so the gravel doesn't do damage to the roadway. Would that be something you'd be open to if we required them to have the parking overflow in those larger subdivisions separated here and there? They could put it in next to a park, for instance, and it would serve double duty. It would serve as overflow parking for the neighborhood and parking for the park in case there's someone in the neighborhood that doesn't have the ability to walk as well or needs to drive down to the location. Is that something that the council would be open to doing?
It wouldn't bother me, just as long as we got several areas within it. But a lot of them, it's already up there now. Might have one overflow parking, it'll be up at the pool.
Right.
And it ain't no good for people that live several blocks away, and have to walk so far. They're not going to use it. That's why the streets end up getting lined with both sides, and then the fire trucks can't get through.
Right.
And I would agree with what Mr. Mosseller is saying. I think it's a proximity issue, not necessarily the type of finish on the ground.
Right. I agree, sir. And it's like with Disney World, there's a trash can every 30 feet because Disney did a full-on study on how far people would walk before they'd just throw trash down on the floor or the ground, and they will not walk more than 30 feet. So. I have also a question about usable open space. In the previous arguments or discussions that I've been in other jurisdictions, one of the things that's come up from a developer standpoint is that if they're required to do stormwater, like a stormwater lake or a pond, as part of their requirement, a lot of them will argue that that needs to be calculated as part of their open space requirement because they're required to do it. And they want to make the most out of their area. In one jurisdiction, it was not allowed. In one jurisdiction, the way they did open space was that you had to have X percentage of your open space as usable open space, being the parks, being the pocket parks or gardens, and X amount could just be open space open to the sky, like forested areas, wetlands, and flood zones and things like that. I know that we have talked so far about taking the wetlands and floodways and things that you absolutely can't build on out of the calculation. But I didn't know if you wanted all of the open space to be usable or all of it to be open to the sky, or if a hybrid was something you would be open to discussing.
I think we'd be open to discussion, and I think I was reading an article on Greenville, and that's what they're fighting about is retention ponds on whether they count.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that argument's has been going on in other areas too, and not all of them have solved it.
You can understand from a developer's point of view.
Yeah. We have, in my past, we had discussions about the difference between stormwater ponds being behind houses, where it becomes a private pond or a private lake, and the maintenance is hard to get to, versus parks or ponds that are along streets, which end up being public spaces where you can have parking beside it. It serves the same purpose. It doesn't end up being a problem in the back of a yard where somebody's kid can get in trouble without being seen because they're screened in by buildings. Some of those designs may show up as a discussion point in the future, just to give you a heads up that looking at it from a public safety standpoint, the more ponds that you can get that have road access or road visibility, the safer the pond will be for the families.
Would an option be to say that, I don't know if anybody does this, that you can, like your retention or your stormwater, you can only count that as like 1 or 2% of open space? I mean, does that make sense? Is that
Sure, that's one of the couple of primary ways to deal with it. One would be to limit the percentage you count it. Another one would be to count it fully if the stormwater infrastructure is amenitized in some way. So like, think about a stormwater pond with like a walking trail around it instead of just a chain link fence, which is.
And that was going to be something I would suggest is to try to make the storm waters
Yeah.
Make it an amenity.
an amenity or at least where they're not ugly and you want to hide them.
We can certainly do that. Really what it sounds like council is interested in is striking a balance between the conservation of, I would call it maybe, undeveloped open space or preserved, conservation areas with usable open space. And so we wanted to think about putting it together and how the standards might work. We can go back to the other slide too, but I just wanted you to see what based on the previous drafts and previous chapters, so the open space requirements are 10% for low-density residential, 20% for MDR and MFR, which is going to be a multifamily residential new district that we're proposing, and 5% of that has to be improved open space. Then the tree preservation requirements that we have already presented have 30% tree preservation. So as you can see, this starts to add up. And so I think the question is, where is the balance? Should we maybe, what are your thoughts on how these?
The only issue that I say could be an issue is like the tree preservation requirement, MDR at 30%, when you've only, the open space is only what, 20%?
That's right. So that adds up to 50%
So, I mean,
of
you-
the developed, that's 50% of the area.
I think we need to look at that.
And that
probably-
and that results into like a highly dense.
Because, I mean, all our sites in the county are challenging anyway, so I would want to think on that or talk to some, more on that, because I think that might be a little high.
So a simpler way to do it would be to set maybe 25, 30%, whatever you want, as just an open space requirement, and then you could make 5% of that improved open space, what everybody's talking about, parks that are usable, and then the rest of it would basically have to be some kind of
That won't
conservation
work
area.
if you got 5% open space and 30% tree save.
But it would really be
You're already at
25%.
35% of your property.
Now, in that 5% of improved space, that's where we will give them options?
That's right.
Okay.
And we could certainly change that. And Mr. Harper, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Really what I was saying with the way I was proposing it was not a 30% tree preservation requirement, but a 30% open space requirement, of which 5% has to be improved open space. So it would leave 25%. So it's not increasing the amount. Basically you could set the amount of the percentage that you want preserved for whatever purpose, and then have subcategories of that. That might be
Yeah.
it might be more certain.
I was just my first time looking at it, but please just simplify everything for us people that. It's easier on everybody when, because, we change in several years, we roll over and staff rolls over and everybody's got to go back and they look at this stuff and they like the way I saw it, somebody else might see it that way, and that wasn't the way it was meant to be. And so,
Absolutely. No, this is an important conversation to put it all together.
yeah.
And that leads to one of the questions that I was going to ask, and just so that we clarify, because I think what we're talking about is if we're saying 30% is open space and 5% is tree save, or 30% is preserved, 5% is for open space. We're talking about 5% of the total site, not 5% of the 30%,
Correct.
because that would be a much smaller percentage. And so we need to be clear in how we're defining that, because we're ultimately talking about 25% then that gets preserved, and 5% of the whole site is the open space, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. So we just need to make sure
And I
that
do
that's-
think we need to be careful on that too. Being site specific, if somebody has more than 5%, they want to have it improved amenities. You know, I just don't want to limit it if somebody's gonna, you know, put a bigger park or whatever. So we'll look at it.
Sure, absolutely. And I think we need to create an incentive for the developers to provide more amenity space. That's a good point.
One topic that came up during the budget retreat was about regional parks and allowing developers to partner with neighboring developers toward larger park areas that might be available for regional park activities. I don't know that we have that in the draft. I don't remember that we have it in the draft, but we did talk about it as an option to have larger park spaces that could then be operated by the county and rented or monetized for parks and recreation. I don't know if you still are interested in that. If you're not, that's fine, happy to walk off. But if you are, then we'll need to work on some language towards that to provide to you for review as well.
I think that's one thing
I
we need to.
support.
I think that's one thing we need to look at, because, you know, one of the complaints I've heard in the past is that, you know, we don't have any park space in Indian Land. If you go into subdivisions, there's a lot of smaller parks in there, but they're not open to the public. So, you know, we almost need to look at a way to where we could bank money or something from different subdivisions to be able to get public parks that are available to everybody.
Thank you. We'll work on that.
I got a question.
Sorry, no, I had
Go
another
ahead,
question.
Mr. Louise.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that I'm wondering, Ms. Harden, and I'm wondering if Ms. Merck DuPont would need to opine on this, is there an ability, to what Mr. Carnes was saying, for existing developments to do the same thing? So even if they have been platted and set aside as neighborhoods, if they have open spaces that adjoin to each other and lead off to some common road or access point, is there an ability to allow them to transfer that property to the county and meet the same requirements that we're building into the current UDO? Kind of like I wouldn't say a grandfathering, but whatever it would be.
Since you asked for Ms. Merck DuPont, I'll wait for her to give an opinion before I opine.
Not
She
a
doesn't
legal
have an
opinion.
opinion at this moment.
Oh, I
She
have-
would
I
need
have
to
them.
research it.
I have them, I just don't want to be wrong.
I would think you would have a lot of kickback from everybody that lived in that community if you opened up their amenities to everybody else.
It wouldn't be it'd be I'm just talking about like the open spaces that
Oh, okay.
nobody goes, like trails and just things like that.
I have a two-part discussion point on that. One is if they are adjacent to each other already and they're already meeting the code, then technically speaking, if they're not changing or reducing the space that's open space that allows that subdivision to be there, then from a planning standpoint, not legal or anybody else, but from a planning standpoint, those properties could be joined as long as they're still maintained in perpetuity. The challenge that's going to come from grandfathering in is that, as Mr. Harper has indicated, some of the neighborhoods are not going to be interested in outsiders coming through their road systems to get to the open space. So in order to achieve that, we might have to look at creating a public access point from a main road. There are several subdivisions in Indian Land, for instance, that have large open spaces that are along the creeks and the tributaries in that area, which might be a good thing to study. But we'd have to acknowledge that the roads that go there currently are private, or privately owned, excuse me.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just trying to figure out to create additional open spaces or park spaces for the public in areas that aren't currently utilized in the Indian Land area.
I'll be more than happy to study that with the staff and get back to you on that with the process.
Thank you, Ms. Harden.
I got a question, Mr. Collins. I got a question which I've had an issues with over the years. I've seen these detention ponds and retention ponds not being kept up. I know detention ponds don't really hold water, so somebody needs to keep those cut. They require them to put them in. They end up being an eyesore. We run into one issue with the what's the neighborhood there at the ambulance service? Walnut Creek. I had some people in there that I knew that called me about that pond up there, that retention pond. The HOA wouldn't cut it around it. They cut out there on the road, but they would not take care of cutting around that and keeping that area clean. And it got snaky and stuff like that. So we need to put something in there somewhere to where these things need to be kept clean. The HOA or whoever, it needs to be, it'd make the neighborhoods look a lot better. We've had that same issue on some commercial stuff that's got grown up and it looks awful. I mean, around the business or something looks nice, your grass cut and everything, then you look right out front of it there, just a big pile of mess growed up in that detention pond. So we need something somewhere to try to.
That's a great point. So there are maintenance standards now, but we'll figure out why they aren't working and beef them up a little bit.
All right, thank you.
I think the two ponds in Walnut Creek are both owned by the county, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And we have talked to the HOA about maintaining some of it, but some of their idea was to go in with a chainsaw and cut down all the trees around the pond, and that didn't fit very well with stormwater standards. So.
But Parks and Recs did do a good job of going over cleaning it up.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that we've had a good coverage of subdivision options. So the next topic, are there any other comments?
I got one more thought on. I mean, I would be, so I really like it on the LDR side. When you start clustering MDR, that's when you start talking about those highly dense areas. So the reason why I say it like that is if I'm trying to think, I mean, I do not have a background in development, but I would look, is there ways to incentivize a developer instead of going automatically to MDR for more lots and sellable units? How do you incentivize them to maybe stay in the lower density side of the house and not just go to MDR? Is that a...
One option is to not allow the cluster subdivision in the MDR. One option is to allow it in the LDR to only gain an extra half unit per acre. Rather than going up to, but the LDR is 1.5 and MDR is 2.5. Split the difference between the two and let them go up to 2 units per acre if they do certain standards in their cluster subdivision. It's something that other communities have done where they restrict it generally to the areas where they want to protect the open space. MDR in our area tends to be more of a suburban density. So you get more units anyway. If you have it as an option in the LDR, not the MDR, then you're incentivizing others to do that in that area.
You're incentivizing growth where sewer's not with LDR, because everywhere there's sewer is MDR.
Well, there are some, I agree on a lot of those spaces in the county for sure. But that's why we need to talk about it.
They're not getting additional density. It's a lot, it's got to do with
They're getting more dense.
affordability.
They're getting more density per acre because, if the overall allows 2.5.
They in our MDR, you realistically can't get 2.5 per acre, not with the open space roads and everything.
Right.
You can, a good site, you get 2, maybe a little bit more. With this, I think you can get 2.5. And it's a numbers game. I don't know how much per foot it costs to put in roads, water, and sewer now, but I imagine it's several $1,000s a foot. I wouldn't know, but it would be very expensive. And, with the smaller lots, they're able to compact their utilities and, it's cheaper for developers. But then you get you hopefully get the better developments, and people, a lot of people, they don't want no grass to cut, and they like going to the parks and having the amenities. And with a traditional subdivision, they don't get as much of that. So, I mean, and I don't think we're going to get a lot, because we really don't have a lot of MDR property that's not developed. And some of it around the city, if it touches the city, the developers are going in the city because they get more density. I mean, that's just going to happen.
You're saying you see this cluster being more attractive just because it's and more realistic in LDR anyway, just by the nature.
I just don't think LDR, you're not going to get, I don't think it's going to help much. That the corridor up Riverside Road and up through Van Wyck and all, I mean, you look at the property owners, they're developers, and then you said there's a development going in Van Wyck, correct?
There is.
Everything's an acre or more, and I don't think they need any kind of incentive in LDR. I don't want. I wouldn't.
They did it. But they did it in Van Wyck and it was a house per acre. But they went the conservation cluster approach because there was wetlands, and so it allowed them to not put as much infrastructure in, but really it allowed them to, as a 400-acre property, they put 315 houses on it. But they couldn't have done that if they didn't have the cluster option. This other one that was 160 acres off of Old Hickory, to me was another good candidate for this in LDR because it was like 30% wetlands and they couldn't build it. But in this scenario, it would allow them to still put 160 units on that acreage, whereas before with LDR they couldn't because they had 30% of it wasn't buildable, and their only option today would be to go to MDR, which wouldn't be something that we would be very excited about.
Well, I think a lot of the LDR you still have in Panhandle, you could get sewer access to it, even though it was zoned LDR a long time ago, and there's sewer access
At Caney
around it
Creek.
that they could get to the site.
There have been several projects in the area that have provided new development opportunities. One question I have is about the potential, because currently the MDR, the cluster that's allowed in MDR says that you need to set aside space for trees or the like, but it doesn't restrict you So if you don't have that much space that is impacted, you can still use the option if it goes through the review. One thing we have talked about in the past is only allowing a cluster subdivision if the acreage has something to cluster for. If the acreage has a steep slope or has a wetland, that we would not allow clustering on properties that don't have, tree saves that would be worth, tree stand that's worth saving, or slopes that need to be in a separate area so that you don't build on them. I don't know how you feel about that, if you want to think about that before we get to the, as we go along with the reviews.
Let's think about that.
Okay.
I think we'll look at it at both of them, but I mean, a lot of that up there is in Indian land, in a lot of the open space LDR.
A lot of the land that's left to develop has an issue with it somewhere,
I know,
like the wetlands and things, so.
Anywhere it does, but I mean, it's zoned LDR.
Yes, there's a lot of LDR in Indian land. I've made a note to myself that before we discuss it again with the Planning Commission and the council, that I need a clear map of where LDR and MDR are currently zoned in the county, so that you can get an idea of if you're applying it here, it goes here. If you're restricting it to there, it goes there.
In terms of making it an incentive, I think that Ms. Harden has raised the primary one. But if most of these areas are currently zoned LDR and your concern is that the developer wants to rezone to MDR for a better development framework, then as council, I think it's really your right and, authority to say no to that. And, really, I think the idea of providing LDR to have a conservation or open space subdivision will certainly, improve the development framework for that site, because you'll have a lot less. I mean, like you mentioned, the foot costs per roads and, all that stuff. So the less length of roads you have, the more compact things are, the better it is. And, really, I think that that's where the conservation subdivision framework is really intended. It's for, more rural areas as opposed to, conventionally more dense neighborhoods.
So if they're currently zoned for LDR and they want to go down the LDR cluster route or conservation route, is that a rezoning?
That would not be a reason.
It's by right. Or how? No.
If they hit the metrics for the subdivision,
Be a
and
development
it's approved.
If we owed it?
Under the proposed rules. Under the current rules, we don't have that option.
Yeah, correct. But I'm just saying, so it would be by right in the new UDO.
That's correct.
Okay? If they meet the conditions.
All right, so we had a conversation back in January about development areas. And council has expressed a number of times interest in doing development areas based on the comprehensive plan, different areas. But there were some concerns with the eastern area of the county. After some discussion, we decided, everybody thought that Highway 522, Rocky River Road would be a good boundary. So we've mapped it. This is what the proposed draft for discussion only development area map would look like. Basically, as you can see, what we did was we just took the more rural southern Lancaster area and wrapped it around up to the eastern side of Highway 522. So the greater Lancaster area is really now just, the areas more directly around the city. So what do y'all think about this map? Is this more of what you were interested in, seeing, and the understanding that the purpose of this is to come up with, and I'm going to show you the purpose with the next slide, really. But
Go back
Well,
to that map.
I'll go back, yes, ma'am. But, so now we do subdivision infrastructure by districts. So the concept is, how do you translate
Need to look at all
the development areas from the comprehensive plan into something that is more, a development standard based on areas. Is this the map you were asking?
Probably number 5.
Yeah, I wanted to know what separates Greater Lancaster from the Panhandle areas. That
Number 5.
It is Waxhaw Creek.
Waxhaw Creek.
And that was, so where I noted areas of concern, Van Wyck is the primary one. So one of the things I wanted to avoid in mapping it was lots that would be in split development areas. And that is a problem there, because there are people who own property on both sides of the creek. It's not the case with Highway 522. So there are a couple of areas where we would, think about tweaking it. It may be plausible to move Greater Lancaster up, because at the time, so Van Wyck has significantly expanded since the original comprehensive plan maps were done. And so there's, an east to west solid block of Van Wyck. So you could make all of the area up to Van Wyck Greater Lancaster, and that might be a good breaking point. What do y'all?
No, I think where you got it, if it's where you break off at bear off at 5 to go to Rock Hill.
And Waxhaw Creek is right there before you get to Highway 5.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that is a good
Boundary line.
distinction between the two.
Where you say you go above the town and cut it above the town as another option?
That's another
'Cause
option.
it's more like,
But that wouldn't be Greater Lancaster, no.
well, he's saying, but you're saying because the Van Wyck and how that town is set up is more like Greater Lancaster than Indian. Is that
Correct. And it's my understanding that one of the forces leading to the annexation is an interest in reducing development
correct?
density. So, maybe it would, I haven't asked all the people who live there, but if they could have less development density, that may be their preference. And that's why I'm asking you.
Certainly living in the town of Van Wyck and the whole thing, and going through all the things that the town does, and certainly they're a lot more interested in less development. So,
I don't know, you know better, you're in that area, but
certainly, they did their whole, their UDO and how they're set up within the town, and how they want to think about the areas that are just outside the town.
But to define that as Greater Lancaster, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it needs to be a different term, but.
Yeah, Greater Lancaster, I don't think so.
Central Lancaster County, maybe? One of the things I'd like to add in is this discussion came about because of the interest a couple years ago about the difference between a subdivision in a rural area, an agricultural area, and the difference in a subdivision of property in Indian land, about whether families need to build entire paved roads with curb and gutter in order to subdivide their family lands. Because the subdivision rules right now are consistent across the county. So no matter why you're subdividing or where you're subdividing, if you've got more than so many lots, then you have to build a road. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, is that these character areas would pertain to some flexibility in some of the rules based on the location, which is why it's important for us to get that line. Another reason it's important for us to get that line in the right place. Do you think that Van Wyck, for instance, reflects more of a design standard and density standard as Indian land, or as in the Greater Lancaster area?
The Greater Lancaster, you can look at their UDO around the town and you can see that for sure.
And would they like to be referenced as a part of Greater Lancaster?
Like I said, I don't know if the term's right, but.
And see, that's what I'm saying.
The name
'Cause
isn't
if you say
necessarily.
you live in Greater Lancaster, I live in Van Wyck.
Well, when you look at it, you've got Van Whack that's one house per acre, but when you get to the city of Lancaster, they're wanting more density. So, I mean, it's not,
They're more like the blue on the map, really. If you want to speak specifically about around the town of Van Wyck, they're more like the blue than anything else.
Come on down.
This is what
We could circle Van Wyck with blue.
I envision, like you said, Van Wyck is one house per acre, but the Riverside Road, a lot of national developers own property down there, in Old Hickory, and I hear Harrisburg Road, Henry Harris Road.
Let's go.
If they stay at 1 unit per acre, I think we're all right. If we do allow a lot more growth there, we got problems. And that corridor is going to develop down through there. 521, or right off of 521, we got we want them coming south instead of going north. I know that's a concern, but
Yeah.
I mean, the 521 corridor, it's Lancaster's chance for some,
Correct.
commercial and mixed-use development within 3 or 4 miles of town. But, I really don't want to see Old Hickory and Riverside with higher density. I think we're hurting ourselves down the road.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So you're saying you would prefer to see Riverside and Old Hickory to remain in that rural kind of blue belt?
Yes, yeah, because you got River Chase with $1 million houses and I think, isn't there a proposal for in the county now? Aren't y'all going through one that's on Riverside, only 100 lots or something like that, and 200 acres? So they will develop in that. Oh, Hickory.
That was the one I referenced. Yeah, it was 160 acres, but it's 315 lots or whatever it was.
well,
It's certainly, it's the postponed one.
When you get there.
go ahead, Mr. Mostello.
Did you get that corrected in the UDO of the east of 522 where they've required so many acres? And we've reduced it. I'd requested to reduce it. I think it was up there, 5 acres, something like that, and we reduced it down because,
I think we were talking about one,
no, just a single family home.
it was 1 acre.
Yes, we removed that from
Yeah.
the comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, as far as the Van Wyck area goes, I mean, the county's not really going to be controlling any development there, so it doesn't really matter if it's
Right.
counted in the Panhandle or Lancaster or what, because the city's going to be controlling what goes in their incorporated area.
Right, but they're still interested in what's that's bordering that town, that's not in the town. So that's the way I was thinking about it. Like what happens to the stuff that's like on the edges, but not directly in the town?
If it's on the edge of town and it has city water and sewer and it's developable, the city, it'll more than likely be annexed.
But
You're talking about for the city of Lancaster.
You're talking about Lancaster, he's talking about Van Wyck.
Oh, no, I don't know nothing about Van Wyck.
We could put a blue belt around, I love that term now, a blue belt around Van Wyck for its, what would be an ETJ in another state extraterritorial jurisdiction, or like a certain perimeter around the city limits, looking at their UDO their comprehensive plan and their future land use map, and come back with a proposal to add that area as a rural. At that point, if we do so, then every rule that we have that would apply in Kershaw and Heath Springs and Beaufort would be similar to the ones that would be applied around there. And again, we can just do this for sketching purposes when we come back.
How you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Yeah, I think I mean, if you're asking me what's it more like, yeah, it's more, I don't know.
Can I just get a clarification? So when we're saying it's rural, we're gonna make it easier for development to occur to some extent, right? We want to encourage growth in those areas.
Rural
Is that
was,
correct?
as a characterization, is being used for things like not requiring paved streets, but allowing for gravel streets that meet the fire code. It is for larger tracts of land or larger subdivisions.
Yeah.
It would not be for something that is the same kind of thing that's up just south of Ballantyne or in the Indian Land area. Smaller lots would not be something that were or advocated or provided for in the rural characteristic.
That's right. So it's my understanding that what we're really looking for in the rural development area is lowered development costs for infrastructure, but for much smaller developments. So, we're thinking more like, family developments or, family subdivisions, that sort of thing, as opposed to, a professional subdivision developed by a development company.
That's what I was struggling with, and I appreciate the question, Jose, because I don't think that's necessarily what the town is going after.
Right.
Thank you.
So what is the town looking for, so we can figure
I
out how
think
to?
the town's looking for like one house per acre, but they're looking for paved roads.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
all the
Yeah, yeah.
the other standards that would go into a subdivision.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think, Councilmember Graham, I think then what we would probably do is you want to keep it closer to the northern panhandle, but we have to define those zoning classifications more clearly in those areas around Van Wyck.
Yeah.
If I understand correctly, Ms. Harden, you can.
I don't disagree. I don't know that we have provided for an additional zoning classification that keeps the rural environment, but with the infrastructure that is required currently in the Panhandle area, because, well, in part because we did the zones 2 years ago, and it's been a while. But we will review it before it comes to you in a draft form to see what we can do to help bring the area around Van Wyck to what Van Wyck would like.
Great. Any other thoughts on the development area map? All right, that's great feedback. So one of the reasons that we were doing this development area map is this is from your current code. This is subdivision infrastructure. It's done by district. And there are a couple of tweaks that staff had suggested for this, but as you can tell, it is something that would be ripe to recalibrate these different standards for the development areas. And so what would y'all think about, basically redoing this type of subdivision infrastructure table instead of using zoning districts, using those 3 development areas that we have just looked at? Would that be something that would work or that you would want?
For me personally, I would prefer to see this by the general district. And I don't know if we can do that. So if we had the rural district and then you had the zoning districts within that rural district and then have this chart, you could do the same thing for the northern panhandle.
Yeah, so what you're saying is then, you would have district standards that varied by the different development area.
Yeah, because I think that was the question that I was just asking about last time, because then that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about.
I definitely agree with that, to have it in districts like that.
All right. Excellent. So in thinking about it, one of the, so when I said that staff had proposed a couple of tweaks, the primary one was curb and gutter for MDR. What would you all think about that as a change to this table?
When you got 70-foot lot, we have curb and gutter now.
Yeah, most of the MDRs,
Yeah, if MDR
by
has
default, they're
curb and-
doing
yeah,
curb
you-
and gutter in
you-
anyway.
You can't, you don't want no smaller lots without curb and gutter. I don't think. You can't have a 70-foot and a,
I believe that most of the curb and gutter requirements are falling under the MS4, which is mostly north, so this would apply it countywide. And I agree, I think that it's very difficult to do a smaller lot subdivision without the curb and gutter, but we don't currently have it as a requirement outside of the stormwater district.
I don't see an issue with that.
Yeah, and so it may be that it's just taking care of itself because of the lot sizes and the issue of taking up space with drainage swales. Okay, so any thoughts on changes that are needed for infrastructure for the different areas? And obviously, this is something we can tweak at the end, and we'll include the development areas in this too. So there will be some changes, but any other thoughts or direction on this?
What the underground wiring? I mean, isn't that? I don't know. I mean, I'm just curious because every time I've seen a MDR, all the wires are underground, right? I mean, is that just something that happens without requiring it, or what's the?
So the suggestion here was actually to remove this as an infrastructure standard at all because, you know, a lot of developments put it in underground. And you don't require it anywhere. So I don't know. Is it something you would want to require anywhere?
I don't think I saw a new subdivision unless it's rural without underground power, and I just wouldn't fly.
It would be awful.
I don't see that corner getting cut.
All right. Well, we will take that out. Any other?
But if it's not stated,
They don't have to do it.
right. So,
Yeah,
but you're saying but you're saying
I think we
it's
should probably.
expected.
I mean,
Yeah, you're saying it's expected though, right?
Yeah,
I say if it's not stated, planning staff
You
can't.
better put it in
Yeah,
the
planning
R.
staff
yeah,
can't defend
you
it.
better for sure.
I would say put it in.
All right. So you want to require undergrounding in MDR?
Yeah, I think for these, we would. And again, it would depend on the region. But yes, for the northern panhandle, I would like it in more, just because I think we're doing it anyway. And I think the utility companies are requiring it, so.
Sure. I think it makes sense. Great. That's good feedback. Any other thoughts on the infrastructure requirements? All right.
One more. The sidewalks. There are sidewalks required on LDR, or am I off on?
Says
I don't think, if you got open ditches, you wouldn't have sidewalks.
They shouldn't. Yeah, well, they are.
it's there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I would study that one a little.
I'll mark it down as a study. It is part and parcel of a good community, which has a path for its community to walk and exercise safely within their own community without having to drive and get out on the road and adding to the traffic. If you can walk and exercise and recreate and relax in your own community, it does drive up some of the value, but it also can be controversial. So we'll look at it. If there were sidewalks going in a street without curb and gutter, they could be laid at grade within a certain amount of distance from the edge of the pavement.
I think any subdivision like that really needs sidewalks, or if it's one house per acre or what.
And staff has recommended going to the 5-foot standard rather than the 4-foot that had been in previous UDOs. I would prefer a 6-foot, but I think that 5 is what we can get with the agreement from developers. 6-foot allows for 2 3-foot wheelchairs or strollers or carts or things to pass easily. But 5 foot is, it's seen as kind of a standard in a lot of the county areas.
I'm thinking of some of the rural subdivisions, and I don't know if any of them have sidewalks. I'm trying to picture them with that. I mean, like River Chase doesn't have sidewalks.
No, that River Chase is under a DA, linked them to the 1998 unit.
My personal opinion is, I just don't think sidewalks in LDR is going to work. That's going to be a different type of development. You're not going to have mass grading, and so if you got a, 1.5 acres, and somebody's going to put in a street with no curbs, they're probably not going to grade the lots up front.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking.
You're going to run into issues tying them together.
Again, I'm thinking of like reasons why a developer would stay at lower density at LDR versus going to MDR, and not having to put sidewalks in, to me, is a little bit of an incentive to stay at LDR. But
It is a good point, for sure. One thing I'd like to mention then is, we have a lot of conversations about people parking on the side of the road, like Mr. Mosteller said, and how if you're only required to do a 22-foot road with 11-foot path on either side, then when someone parks on one side, it makes it to where there's slaloming, essentially, if there's a lot of people on the road. We have had people call our offices to complain that the people across the street are blocking their driveway by simply parking on the side of the road behind their driveway, so they don't feel like they're going to be able to safely maneuver out of their own driveway. And we also have challenges with people exercising and walking on the street at night when they go out to walk their dogs, if there's not a safe place to go. So when we bring it back, I may ask the consultants to help me find some kind of safety method that we can add to it that won't increase the expense so much for the development, but will increase the safety of the neighborhood.
I'm just thinking, again, I'm thinking of River Chase and a couple of other ones. And one of the differences is they have very wide roads. And that makes a difference too. I mean, if you've got a narrow road sitting in there, I think that would be completely different. But with a wide road, like River Chase and some of those other ones, it definitely makes a difference. But
So maybe that becomes the thing, that if you're going to use a 22-foot road, you've got to put in curb gutter and sidewalk. If you're going to use a 26-foot paved area, which is preferred by the fire department for sure, for ease of access, then we would maybe not require that. Would that be something you'd be open to discussing?
Maybe that's what you need to require for LDR, is a wider road, and that you're not getting the whole thing you would get for a sidewalk, but you're getting more access for people to walk on.
Thank you.
yeah, Millstone Creek's another one. Wide road. Yeah, I don't know.
All right, well, we will keep working on that. So just to keep us hopefully on schedule, y'all are, come on. There we go. All right, so this is our last slide for feedback and substance. So these are just kind of several concepts that we have heard a lot of discussion about. Some of them we've hit already. One that has been the subject of some discussion is private road design for family and minor subdivisions. Currently, there is, if you have 2 lots, there's no standard for the road design. If you have up to 5 lots, you can have a gravel surface. And this somewhat ties in with the SCDOT standards preferred for roads, question mark. Really, what are y'all's thoughts on requiring specific road types for different sizes of developments? I mean, it makes sense, a lot of places do it, but how you decide and where the break is something that every place does differently.
We've had a number of family situations where grandparents have passed away and everybody's trying to split the property up between 20 heirs, and they got 100 acres and everybody's getting 5 acres, but the guy in the back gets his 5 acres, he got no way to access it, so.
So that's the problem. And I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. If you have that situation, do you want to require, those folks to have paved roads? Because eventually he's going to sell his lot to somebody else. And so it's not going to be a bunch.
Depends on where it is.
It depends on where it is, but
One thing we have created, this is, for full disclosure, I'm talking about a piece of property that I own interest in. We have went private roads on everything. I own interest in property on the backside of a subdivision. Previously, I wouldn't have been able to develop it because you can only go 100 lots with having to have 2 entrances. Well, now there will be 2 entrances, but one of them will be through a new subdivision with private roads. So my issue is my property worthless, or can it be developed? Because we require connectivity, and I mean there's other properties that we join, and we're putting people in the same situation where they'll have access, but their second entrance would have to be through another subdivision. My question is to develop something, is only one public road required? Because with these private roads, they can close them, can they? Or can they not? Or we need to put that in agreements?
That's one of the things we have to have a discussion about at the next meeting, is the definition of what a road is. And you'd think that you would know what a road is, but when you're talking about the definition of public works for a road, public safety for a road, planning and subdivision for a road, we actually have different definitions. And that's one of the things we have to get unified on. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but what I am saying is that when you have a rule that says that you have to have access to a public road, and the planning department who's looking at the subdivision says it's a public road if it is owned by the public, so that the county owns or has accepted the ownership of the road. But you have another entity that says, well, it's privately owned, but public has the rights to access it. So emergency management and public works and all the other folks have rights to access it. So it's essentially a public road, but the private maintenance. And so those are two.
We have rules for gated communities here.
Yes, and that also goes to the gated community discussion. If it's privately owned, can you gate it? And if that's the simple definition, is that if you own it, you can gate it, we are subject to several different petitions potentially for gating roads, which cuts off on our public safety delivery. So we have to have that conversation and make sure that when we're doing this, that we have that definition clear as to how that applies. Now, that said, if we do define it as the public as access, but it's privately owned, and you're requiring people to make connectivity, one of the things that we'll probably have to get with legal on for some advice is how can we require that? Is there a mechanism that the first neighborhood that has the original roads that's going to be doubly impacted now by the new one can create an easement or a HOA, or can they join in a group HOA just to pay for the roads? Because if you don't, and you're allowing this new development in through the older one, its HOA is the one that's responsible for keeping up that roads, and suddenly they're going to have to be keeping up for 50 more cars. We'll get yelled at big time, and so we have to have that settled in first before we go further with that.
That was an unintended consequence of private roads.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, absolutely. And if you're ready to talk about public roads, we're happy to go forward with it. We'll start talking about planning for that and everything. Happy to do it.
Where's Jeff?
so your
I got
idea.
a question, Allison, you might need to answer this, I don't know. The private drives up to 5 lots.
Yes, sir.
What's the road width that's required?
25 if it's not with utilities, and 30 feet if it is.
Okay, well, that's good, because we got to have enough room for fire trucks If you got a house fire down that road and you got fire trucks and firemen in their personal cars parked on one side, you got to have room for tankers doing water shuttles out of there. In these rural areas, don't have fire hydrants. They have to depend on that. So we need to make sure our roads are wide enough for our
I
fire trucks.
agree. As part of the strategic plan that Ms. Snowden was talking about, we've started working more with public safety in our technical review committee. And as part of the discussions through technical review committee with the fire marshal there, we now include the fire marshal and other departments on the minor subdivision review to make sure that we're not accidentally creating an easement that doesn't allow for public safety to reach it. So that has been a good outcome of the strategic plan, and I'm very proud of the staff for working together on that.
So if it's a subdivision and it's a private road, you're saying, is the suggestion to go to require some kind of standard for that private road?
We already require just the bare minimum of standards if you are dividing your property in less than 5 lots. Let's say you have 10 acres.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this slide is just for family or minor subdivisions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's right. All right, so one other topic that we talked about was sidewalks, but what about perimeter sidewalks? I'm talking about sidewalks on the primary road frontage. There are pros and cons. The pro is that if you require sidewalks, there will be sidewalks if and when the county wants to tie them all together. The con is that you end up with, areas where you have a sidewalk for 100 yards and then no sidewalk for 300 yards and then a sidewalk for 400 yards. What are y'all's thoughts on requiring perimeter sidewalks for eventual fill-in by the county?
I think if you don't require them, then eventually the governmental entities have to pay for them. Where at least at that point in time, you got 50% of them in or 40% of them in. You only have to connect in between them. I know York County requires that on theirs, and as I've driven through going to work and stuff, you see those sidewalks keep connecting together, but there's still gaps in them, but they are connecting more together.
So is that something that y'all want to keep going with?
I think it's probably more in a suburban kind of setting like up in Indian Land than out in a more rural area.
So are you just talking about the family and minor subdivisions, or are you talking all overall?
This is overall.
I now have a sidewalk in Elgin in front of our new dollar store. It's the only one that'll be there. Everything else will be residential after this. So, I don't know. It's just that some on my seat that are beside the roads are not maintained. Just like 521 head north of town, they look terrible. Nobody.
And they're right on the road. It can't.
Yeah, they don't
It's
keep
really tough.
I'd rather have good-looking buffers out there. People, they can do their walking within their communities. That's just, if we were in the city, that'd be different.
Well, that's all good feedback, and I think that the flexibility of these development areas may allow maybe both. All right, so currently the SCDOT standards are required for roads larger than 5-lot subdivisions. I think that's a good way to go. Lots of communities use that. It's a known set of standards. Any thoughts or feedback or concerns from constituents on that as a requirement? All right. One other idea that we'd had was to include a townhouse or multifamily subdivision as a type. Basically, when you think about a standard subdivision, you're platting out lots with setbacks, et cetera. But when you have a townhouse subdivision, you have 0 lot lines. You may want to have different procedures and processes. You may want to allow them in different districts or not. What are your thoughts about whether it would be useful to have a townhouse subdivision as a different subdivision type?
Well, this is just my personal opinion. Around the city of Lancaster, we are lacking those type of developments. I noticed there's a couple of projects going in the city, but I mean, it's there's I think, you know, there's a market for it, and I think there's a need in certain areas. Out where I live, out in the country, Father, I don't really think, you know, 5-6 miles out of town, I wouldn't be looking for them that far out. I mean, that's just my thought.
It's the type of housing that gets the most questions in the office for me is why aren't you allowing townhomes in some of these other zones? And I need to be able to do townhomes on my property because there's a demand and, you know, I can get more in a townhome. But allowing it as a subdivision type would mean that you'd have the standards would be in that subdivision type to make sure that it doesn't become something else.
Present it to us, and all we can do is tell you to take it out.
Sure, and I guess the real reason I had this here was I know at the beginning at least that there was significant opposition to townhouses, and so if y'all were going to say no townhouses, then but yeah, we're happy to draft it up and take a look at it.
Just make sure the
I think in
standards are
certain
really
areas,
good.
You know, to me, especially the 521 corridor heading north for several miles is a good area because it's close to shopping and city, and there's water and sewer availability up there.
And I apologize. The commercial entities that want to come in look for better densities to build near, and townhouses are, you know, more density per acre, provide good housing, good entry-level housing, and sometimes more affordable housing, not always, but sometimes. And that will help in trying to elevate the business opportunities as well.
And you know, it depends on where it's built, on whether it's affordable housing or not.
Oh, no,
You
yeah.
got townhomes up in Indian Land that are $350,000, $500,000. So
Yep. And they can get upwards of $1 million or more depending upon the amenities and the way that it's structured and the land cost. But I don't know that we're there yet in all of the areas, but we are close to it.
All right, so I realize that we're running out of time. We can make these. Oh no, it's not you. It's just a lot of good stuff to talk about. Okay, so grading plans currently south of Highway 5. DHEC handles the stormwater, and so there are situations, as we understand it, where the county is going to have a development of some type, but doesn't know about it at the very beginning. Adding a grading plan approval and also some grading standards, compaction, et cetera. You know, do you hear anything from constituents about problems with sinkholes, with settling, cracking slabs, or, you know, cracking infrastructure, that sort of thing? What are the issues, if anything, that you all hear with grading and with some kind of?
You
are
have
you
to
in more
have
rural areas or?
anything over 2 acres, do you have to have a grading plan? Is that with the state?
I believe it's required by DHEC,
I
yes.
think it's required.
It is required by DHEC. It's a question of whether you want the county to also look at it.
They review it. I mean, they review what
Allison, why don't you tell us what?
you know what you get. If you're getting 2 different approvals from 2 different agencies, you got issues. Because one's going to tell you they want it this way, and another one's going to tell you they want it that way. So
The interest is to try and make sure that we get permits for the projects that are going forward. It's part of a response to customer complaints that they will get a grading permit from DHEC and they'll start their grading work and then go in to start doing their building, and either they try not to get a permit and start and somebody catches them, or they come to the building department with a permit for a building and the grading has been done and they've started with, you know, putting out the footers for the foundation and no one's reviewed it yet. and we're not sure that it's been compacted because we don't have a copy of the report. In addition, when we're talking about tree save and part of the code, we don't have an opportunity to look at tree save if they've gone in, flattened the land, got a grading permit from DES, and then we are next on line for permitting. So it is a little bit about enforcement, it's a little bit about protecting the trees, it's a little bit about making sure that we catch those folks that would like to avoid us at all possible.
Like I said, I'm still going to say you can't have two agencies reviewing the same document and writing it up. I mean, ever who has authority over that district is the one that, whether it's DHEC or Stormwater, should be reviewing it. I mean, you have to have the final, the applicant or developer or whoever has to have that turned in to the county before they can grade, don't they? I mean, if they,
Not below 5. They don't have to do anything for us for grading because we don't have a rule like this on the books. They could go straight to DES, and then we miss out on opportunities to get some things fixed.
I'll have to think about that one.
Okay, thank you.
And what I would suggest is because I understand where Mr. Harper's going. If you have two people that you're having to please and they're inconsistent, you're going to be stuck in a nightmare.
Right.
And what we could do is we could provide some tier system where it says anything that is in conflict with whatever DES is requiring, DES governs. And that way you have a clear line of sight that anything is just additional that we may require. But we definitely are seeing issues in the northern panhandle with washouts, with sinkholes. I just have an email that came in yesterday. So there are things that we need to address, and we need to make sure that our folks have the tools that they need to enforce the provisions in these plans.
And the requirement could be as simple as, to get the permit, you have to provide us with your DHEC application and approval.
Correct.
On anything over 2 yeah, that'd be part of the requirement for a permit.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so the Carolina Thread Trail, last question. Would the county be interested in requiring dedication of Carolina Thread Trail segments on lots or parcels that are being developed that are on the Carolina Thread Trail master plan map?
I would be interested.
If we require dedication, does that run into any eminent domain issues?
Possibly.
Yeah, we need to.
So it would implicate takings issues, and in the way that we're doing it, it wouldn't be an eminent domain in the way that the county would be purchasing the property, but the county would be requiring dedication of the property, requiring dedication of the trail, as a condition of granting the development approval.
This would be more working with the developer than it is working with the individual.
Could I ask our legal to
This is
give us
definitely a
an
question
opinion?
for your legal
Not
counsel.
opinion, to make a comment on this? No opinion.
This gives me great pause, I'll just say it now.
Okay, that's all I need to hear.
And, another question is,
I'm on the
does the
same
county
page.
want to own the trail itself? So, it may be that you don't want to own and maintain the trail. If you don't want to own and maintain the trail, then dedication really.
Yeah, we found that the county doesn't like to be in the trail business.
That's exactly right.
No, we don't want to own.
We have a few, and
We've had that debate.
A subdivision or the
Sounds like
HOA or
it's kind of a
whatever should
natural
be
decision
responsible.
then. All right. Any other comments on any other subdivision or infrastructure topics?
if I was a developer, I don't think I would be adverse to it because it's just another amenity that eventually, if not right away, that the homeowners in my subdivision are going to have access to, but
You could make it an incentive program where they volunteer to put the easement on the property if it's in the trail program, and they would get an incentive, reduced pavement requirement, increased density, something like that. That would, and we'd have to run that kind of program through our legal team as well to make sure that there's a proper nexus between what we're asking and what we're giving. But it would be better as a carrot rather than a stick.
Well, great. Any other thoughts on Module 3? So basically, everything is on track. We're expecting the delivery to you in October, and we're working with staff, and staff is working with the stakeholder committee to get all of the comments to us in time to do that. Any other questions for me?
have any other questions?
And Mr. Chairman, based on that, we will not have UDO as part of the CAL meeting in August.
Sounds
Just
good.
make sure we're clear. Unless there's a topic you want to bring back up, we can do that. But as of now, we don't have a UDO conversation scheduled for the August CAL.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn in a second. We stand adjourned.
Have a good night, all.